What's going on, guys? It's Mike. Welcome. This is episode number 145 of The Currency, 145 of the podcast. Glad to have you guys along. Recording this live. I guess I'm broadcasting this live on YouTube. So we're streaming the podcast today, and we will, of course, post this to all the audio platforms, as we always do. What is it? It's Thursday. It's June 6th, 2024, Thursday. It's in the afternoon as I do this, 4 p.m. Eastern, and it is about 91, 92 degrees Fahrenheit outside here in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a nice, hot, I guess, late spring day. It's not summer yet until June 20th or 21st, first day of summer. But man, we're deep into summer already here in the Southeast. Hope you guys are doing great. Today I want to talk about business. I think I titled this episode True Business with a question mark. But I want to talk about business. I've been doing some digging over the last handful of months, even into early towards the end of last year and the first part of this year. I had an aha moment a while ago, and I want to share it with you today. I want to kind of hash it out a little bit. And I think this is going to be rather illuminating. Now, people could talk about business and they're like, oh boy, boring topic. This applies across almost all aspects of human endeavor. So we're focusing on business, but the concept, the principle that I want to share today applies to so many things. And what I want to get at today is, what is the real purpose of business? Now, we've heard for generations now, decades at least, I think it was Peter Drucker, famous management consultant, business thinker, etc. I think it was him. It may have been Milton Friedman. I forget who it was. Maybe they're echoing the same concept here. But the idea of the purpose of business is to make a profit. And I don't have a problem with that, because you cannot stay in business if you don't make a profit. However, there is something bigger to this, and I want to get at that today. Now, this gets into some kind of murky territory, and we see the misapplication of what I'm going to get to in a moment. And when you misapply it, it causes some serious problems. And we're seeing that in our culture now, where businesses are taking, I don't want to say this concept that I want to share with you, but they're taking kind of like a bastardized, hollowed out, baseless, foundationless version of this thing and applying it, and it's corrosive. And what you find in society and you find in life and the world is, like, often you take something that is true or good or right, you warp it, pervert it, you synthesize it, modify it in ways that it's not meant to be, and then you apply it and it doesn't work, and people go, see, look, that's bad. You got to not do that. And yet you shouldn't pervert it. But they use that to then discredit the underlying idea that is often true or right. So it was either Milton Friedman, or Peter Drucker. I don't remember who. Someone in the chat can tell me who they think it was, but they said that the purpose, the sole purpose, the only purpose of business is to make a profit. Now, a lot of people find that problematic today, because they think, oh my gosh, making a profit is evil, making a profit is bad. And it's not necessarily. It's not at all, actually, because a profit is a kind of lagging indicator, potentially, of value that was created. Meaning, someone or someone's, a company, an individual, came up with an idea, they solved a problem, they created a product or a service that people are like, I'm willing to pay for that. That thing's great. It's valuable. So in doing that, you've somehow made the world a little bit better, or a lot a bit better, depending on what it is you're offering. And what you'll find is then, because people are willing to pay for it, that they're willing to let you make a profit. You can do this in a way that you make money. Now, if the company's not well run, obviously you're not going to make a profit. So that's not to say that you didn't create value. I don't mean to say that, like, profits at the end of the day are the only thing that determine if you create a value or not. You could create value. You could save lives with your product or services. You can make lives better, et cetera, et cetera. You can make the world a better place and still lose money in the process. That doesn't mean that the world's unfair. It might mean that you I was going to be crass, you stink at business. It could be that you're bad at pricing. It could be bad, you lack confidence. You've created this amazing thing. You could probably charge more for it, Maybe you've got the wrong moral framework that allows you to go to market with confidence. And so you're over here going, well, I really just want to help people, and this maybe I'm charging too much, and so on. But at the end of the day, this concept that the sole purpose of business is to make a profit, I think is flawed. Not because I think that profits are wrong or that profits are bad or that somehow profits are intrinsically evil. And if you're making profits, that's a bad thing and you're probably a bad person. You're probably taking advantage of people. This is a big thing with the Marxists. The Marxists and socialists assume that if you're making some kind of profit, you're somehow stealing from the worker. The bourgeois, the bourgeoisie, they're lazy and they're taking advantage of the poor working class. And you got the elites up there, and they're horrible and evil, and we got to, murder them all, essentially, and then put the workers in charge of everything. And then, lo and behold, the workers are no better. Because why? Because we're all human beings. We're just sitting in different circumstances. So this idea that making a profit is bad because profits in and of themselves are immoral is in my book wrong. Often making a profit is a great thing. I work as a consultant with a lot of privately owned businesses, and I've talked about this a million times. These owners are making a profit. They've become wealthy through their efforts. But to just look at that and go, well, see, this is terrible, is to be so myopic, it's embarrassing. I mean, you look at the value and the wealth that they create in their community. You look at the health of the families and the individuals that are involved in their business that work for them. You look at the strength of, the rebeautification of a downtown because a number of city fathers, if you will, and I know, make your comments, are making wealth and then investing that back, some of it back into the community and vitalizing a community. It's not necessarily evil. But I do not believe that the sole purpose of a business is to make a profit. I think this is reductionistic. I think this is something where, whether it was Drucker or Milton Friedman, is it Friedman or Freeman? Why am I drawing a blank there? But anyway, Milton Friedman, came up with this because, well, we can get into it, but there's kind of a materialistic, you've got to find a materialistic, naturalistic, scientific definition as we professionalize the business endeavor and the institutions of business. I think it's reductionistic. It's like, okay, that's handy. It's a guide. It helps people say, okay, this is what I have to do. And there is some truth to it. I'm not poo-pooing it, but I think there's something greater. We're going to get into it in half a second. Now, let's talk about the world of academics. Let's start getting at this. And this is kind of where I started having my kind of moment of aha here. In the world of academics, academia, the higher learning, if you will, not just grade school and secondary education, but let's look at college. You're doing a undergraduate degree, you're doing maybe a graduate degree, maybe you're doing a terminal degree, you're doing the final degree in the track. Maybe that's a master's, maybe that's a doctorate of some sort in your area, your discipline. If you look at the world of academics, and if you look at an outline of academic subjects, meaning there are various things that you can study. You can study history and law and art and biology and mathematics and computer science, all these different areas, disciplines that you can study. And those are grouped. There are typically 5 groupings. So you have the humanities. This would be, for instance, the arts, fine art, dance. It would include things like music. It would include things like literature. Anything that's kind of, this is circular. Anything that's part of the humanities is part of the humanities. Like, that's great, Mike. Oh, what a genius comment to make. But the humanities encompass these kind of culture and art and the human endeavors that we find that tend to be more expressive, creative, and so on. The second would be the social sciences. Now, this would be the study of things like history. It would be the study of sociology. It would be the study of economics. And this is where you are trying to apply the rigor of scientific method and the approach to sciences to various aspects of the human experience. So this would, like I said, you've got sociology, you've got history, etc., economics, and this is where they're doing things like they're trying the best they can to use scientific method, regression analyses, and deconstruction of text and so on. I would also say that in the humanities you have philosophy, theology, and some of those things too. So I just want to round that out. Okay, so you've got humanities, social sciences. I'm not doing these in any specific order. You've got the natural sciences. Anyone that's gone to high school, grade school knows what those are. That's biology and physics and geology. This is using the classic kind of, most of us think of science as a classic scientific method, classic approach to, it's empiricism. We're talking kingdoms and phylums. We're talking, neutrons and atoms and the periodic table and just all that kind of stuff. Hypotheses, theories, experiments, and so on. And then you've got mathematics, or what some people would call, let's see what you got, natural sciences, the hard sciences. So that would be mathematics. That I think sometimes people put computer sciences in there, but this is more like learning algebra, trigonometry. And believe it or not, maybe some of you, our listeners, are watching right now. There are people who go to university to learn math. I mean, my background is like marketing and strategy and business. Like going to university, especially graduate level, to study math is like, that's just like a whole different, I'm sure this is what convinces me that aliens walk amongst us. And that's tongue in cheek, by the way. If you love math, God bless you. I mean, math is an amazing thing. I never realized as a kid, like it took me until I was older for the coin to drop. I never understood that math was a way of communicating abstract ideas, that it was a language for grappling with abstract ideas. And I had this bizarre, I'll just share this real quick, this story, bizarre experience. It was just so strange. It was like, so I've always struggled. I've been mildly dyslexic as a kid, love reading, so reading was never a problem, but spelling, terrible speller. And then things like double-digit math as a kid, I would wrestle with it. I would get numbers flipped around, like I'd write 7s and 4s backwards, I remember 3s. When you had double-digit math where you're multiplying 72 by 12, you got to cross, the way you stack it and do it. I don't know how they do it with the new math, the Common Core. I don't know, how that happens, but essentially in the old days you had to kind of, multiply diagonally and all that kind of stuff. And I would just struggle with it. I would go for remedial help. Rochester Institute of Technology, they had some program, and I think I would go like Saturdays. And there was a really kindly fellow that really helped me break through. I was able to overcome the limiting aspects of it, but I never became a mathematician, never loved math. Don't have a problem with it, basic algebra or basic mathematics. I can calculate a commission rate, no problem. I can calculate gross margin, any type of business math, accounting, etc., no problem. But I've struggled with it. And I never understood that math was conceptual. And I tend to actually be a conceptual thinker. I mean, I tend to think in bigger picture. So I had taken night classes during high school in commercial printing. So I was going to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology, while I was in high school. As I got older, was getting college courses on industrial paper making and the history of printing, commercial printing, etc. And then I took a little bit of a break. I did Bible school and some stuff, and I wanted to go back to college. So I went to the local community college, Monroe Community College. And they're like, yeah, you're a little weak in math. Like, you can enroll, et cetera, but we want you to take this remedial mathematics course. And it was one of these things where you went to the learning center and you sat, and there was probably some workbook. I don't remember the details. Computers were a thing, but they weren't a thing. So you weren't sitting at a computer necessarily. You were working through stuff, and there may be an audio that went with it, but it was self-directed. And it was algebra. It was college-level algebra. And I remember it was the craziest thing. I'm sitting there working through, and I'm looking at the algebraic formula or formulae or whatever you call them. And it dawned on me, I just had this aha moment. It was just like my mind opened up, and I realized that what I was doing is I was working on concepts, that it wasn't so much, okay, the x minus the A equals B squared. Like it was just like I would get so hung up on all these symbols and how did it work and what were the rules and the structure and the process. But when I stepped back, I understood intuitively somehow that algebraic formula was representing a concept. There was a larger concept that was happening. And that if you work the formula out, it gave you the answer to this kind of conceptual problem. And this is where the bizarre thing, so that's crazy enough, the aha moment, no one ever explained that to me. And for the rest of that session, for the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I don't know how long it was, I was in this strange place where I could look at a formula and intuit the answer. I didn't have to work them out. I don't mean like I just glanced at it like a speed reader and boom, I had the answer, like Rain Man, 437. No, but I mean, I'd look at it. I didn't have to wrestle with it. I just kind of looked at this thing. I saw the pieces, but I saw it in its whole, and I knew what the answer was. And it was uncanny. It was just this weird thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually a genius. I'm a hidden genius. Boy, my parents, they were wrong. I was much smarter than they gave me credit for. Sadly, that was just like a thing that stayed with me. Something opened up in my mind. I was able to do something that was hidden from me. And then that thing closed up again. I've never been able to just sit down and do math that way since. But I was able to keep this understanding that math is a concept. So that's my little, and I probably would have been like, I don't know, 20. I don't know how old I was, 19, somewhere around there. So kind of crazy. All right, so here we are. We've got 4 of the 5 areas. We've got the humanities, we've got the social sciences, we've got the natural sciences, and we've got the kind of hard sciences, if you will. The last one is called the applied sciences. Some people call it applied arts and applied sciences, but it's the applied sciences. Those are things like business, military sciences, journalism, broadcasting, family services, communications, all these kind of applied arts and sciences. Graphic design would be another one, where you're kind of doing things. All right, now here's the thing. I'm looking at this and I'm realizing I have this kind of, again, another aha moment. You guys are like, Mike, we've all known these things. Like, where are you? I must be on the slow train. But I looked at these things and I realized your first 4 are all a pursuit of truth. And you have to think about academics in the classical sense. You have to think about academics, higher learning, in the historical, classical sense. Today, you can make the argument that the whole education system is corrupt, it's bloated, it's lost its way, it's a waste of time and money. You can make all those arguments. I'm not here to argue that one way or the other. And I do think culturally, most people approach education, higher education, meaning I'm done with high school, I've done my mandatory required, so now I'm going to go to college. They look at that as skills acquisition so that they can do a certain job. I want to become an engineer, I want to become an accountant. Or they look at it as kind of a credibility, a door opener. Like once you get that onion skin, then you have doors will open for you. But you got to complete this thing. You got to prove to the world that you can do this job, not so much from a skills perspective, but more from a credibility. So it's like conferring upon you credibility, the right to move on into society, into the higher echelons. So I think that's the 2 ways typically people tend to look at higher education now. It's skills acquisition for a job, or it's conferring upon you some type of certification, letting the world know. It's kind of like a signal to the world that, yep, you've finished college, you should be let in. And if you haven't finished college, you shouldn't be let in. You shouldn't be allowed to apply for certain kinds of jobs and so on. So that's how we think of it now. But historically, and I would even argue now, that university, college, higher education, bachelor's degree on forward, is the pursuit of truth. When you look at literature, true literature, it's not just about being creative. Like I wrote this amazing novel. The greatest novels are a pursuit of truth. They're trying to communicate an idea. The greatest paintings, greatest painters are trying they're chasing after truth and they're trying to discover it. They're trying to grab a hold of it and articulate it somehow. You look at Picasso. which I'm a fan of Picasso's genius. There's something ugly about Picasso's work. It's stunning in many ways. It is genius in many ways, but it's not beautiful necessarily. And you look at it and you're like, everything's distorted and there are all these different fractals, if you will. But what Picasso is trying to articulate, this is at the beginning of postmodernism, where you have all these different perspectives. What is truth? Is something objectively true, and am I representing it? Or are there multiple perspectives of the same thing? Are people all experiencing this one thing differently? So his art shows these things, they almost look monstrous. But what he's showing is all these different perspectives by which different viewers are seeing something. And he's trying to capture that somehow in a two-dimensional medium like a flat canvas. But again, you have to give him credit, whether you love his art or don't, if you find it aesthetically pleasing or you don't. There's a genius in what he was doing, and that he was pursuing and trying to somehow articulate truth. So literature, art, architecture, you look at architecture, architecture's after some level of truth. Picasso's Spanish, spent time in Barcelona, didn't live there his whole life. But you look at Gaudi. I mean, you look at, Lydia and I were in Europe just, back in April, and we got to go back to Barcelona a second time, and I got to go in with her to the Sagrada Familia, the Sacred Family, the basilica or the cathedral that Gaudi envisioned and designed and began construction on. He died before it was finished. It's still not finished. It's a 100-year project, but the beauty, and it's not just an aesthetic beauty. He was after a truth. If you know anything about Gaudi's work, he kind of had this thing, and then they call him a modernist, which is funny because his forms are very organic. I tend to think of modernism as this clean, cold, but that's America. In Spain, they refer to his style as modernist. He was after, look, man designs with hard, straight lines and angles, but God designs with curves and organic shapes and softness, etc. And so he wanted to create architecture that somehow recognized the beauty of how God creates as a testament to God and to his creation. So you see the Sagrada Familia, you see some of his other works throughout a place like Barcelona, and you realize like he was after a higher idea. He wasn't just trying to design something cool, and he wasn't trying to be weird. He was trying to discover truth and express it, or maybe he had discovered a truth and was trying to work that into his work and his art, integrated in. So you can see all these things. The sciences, so any type of creative endeavor, often the best creative work is somehow trying to expose truth. It's after what is true and how can I express that. Even a good pop song. I mean, we're not talking about the academics right now, but sometimes a pop song just hits. Now, sometimes it's just the hook. It's like the candy. But if you listen to some of the lyrics, they hit, not because they're so deep, but it expresses something true about life. It might be unrequited love. It might be struggling with depression and addiction, alcohol. It might be loneliness, etc. But even popular music, and not high art necessarily, but it's trying to express truth. And the ones that speak to us the most, they speak to us because they are true. There's some element of truth in there. Same for philosophy. They're trying to discover the truth. Theology, trying to discover the truth, understand the truth. That's the humanities. You look at social sciences. Well, I don't have to beat you up on that one. History. What is true about the past? We're trying to understand it. We're trying to get more materials. We're trying to get more context. What was King George really like, and why did this happen in Canada back in 1801? And how about Mexico back in 1622 when the king this and that? There's this pursuit of truth through history, pursuit of truth through the social sciences, pursuit of truth through linguistics, etc. And then I think if we get into the sciences, like the hard sciences, natural sciences and hard formal sciences, I think I said hard before, formal sciences, physics, biology, mathematics, computer science, all this, it's all a pursuit of truth. Now, they might be pursuing truth in different domains. Some might be pursuing truth in economics, while others are pursuing truth in fine art, while others are pursuing truth in dance, while others are pursuing truth in some high-level mathematics that your dyslexic marketing pal Mike has no conception of. But they're all after some aspect of the truth. Now we get to the applied sciences, and the name kind of gives it away. Applied sciences is the application of those truths into the real world. If all these other disciplines and other kind of categories, these 5 categories, these other 4 categories of the 5, are a pursuit of truth, the applied arts and sciences, or applied sciences, or applied arts, depending how you like to say it, is all about the application of the truth. So for instance, in physics, a scientist discovers something that is true about the universe and about matter and energy. That gets translated into engineering, where technology is created. That technology is applied science, it's applied truth. An engineer says, oh, well, if it's true that this material has that property and it conducts in this way, and we can then take that and use it in a way that becomes a technology for us, a digital technology, an analog technology, whatever, that allows us to manipulate the world around us somehow, to have more power, to have more agency, to create either destructive things like bombs or constructive things like better, more comfortable housing. Just be any kind of thing. But when they're finding a truth upstream in the pursuit of truth in those 4 areas of academic pursuit, they are then applying these truths in the applied sciences. And this is where we get to business. And if you've been with me so far, great. Thank you so much. But where we get to business, we go back to that original thing, which I think, as Milton Friedman said, the primary purpose of business is to make a profit. Now, I think that that's a true statement in the sense, it's kind of like saying the primary purpose of a person is to breathe. Because if you don't breathe, you can't live. But it's reductionistic, and like that's all that this is about. Like if my life is just about breathing, that's a pretty pathetic life. It becomes very myopic. It becomes very small. I'm just kind of focused on, am I breathing? And now that's a bad analogy because I can't necessarily control my breathing. I can try to stop myself from breathing, but it's a what do you call it? An autonomic response. I forget the medical term. Forgive me. Someone will know. If you know, just throw it in the chat. Hold on one second. Charlie's jumping and saying, "Hey Gastin, hey Charlie, what's up, buddy?" For those of you listening after this is a live stream on YouTube, so we're going to get comments from time to time. And at the end of this, by the way, I'll do a Q&A part. So when we get to the end of this, as I wrap things up, I'll open up the chat for comments. You can make a comment now, but I'll have to hold off a little bit till I'm done here. So if you look at that as kind of, I don't know what the analogy would be, eat. Okay, so the purpose of life is eating. So it's the same. So it's analogous. If you say the purpose of business is to make a profit, it's kind of analogous. I mean, it breaks down a little bit. Don't hold me to this. But if the purpose is to make a profit, it's kind of like saying the purpose of a human being is to eat. You have to make a profit to keep a business going, and you have to eat to keep you going. Like you don't go if you don't eat, but you can't be forced to eat, and you could be very unsuccessful at eating. If you look at some of our ancestors, it was a struggle. And it's not that they were unsuccessful because they were idiots. They had the cards stacked against them at times. They had weather and famines and disease and insects and pests and so on to contend with. We've overcome a lot of that, although we sit on a fragile system. I mean, we could be back in a situation. It doesn't take much. I think COVID showed us it doesn't take much for the logistical chains to break down, et cetera. But let's not spend time there. I know my analogy is not perfect, but the point being, making a profit isn't enough. And if you look at the academic disciplines and you say, well, all these academic disciplines are the pursuit of truth, and then business falls within this applied arts and sciences, it's an applied science or an applied art, it's probably a little bit of both, then really business is about the application of truth in a very specific realm of the human experience. Now, business can do all kinds of things. it can be a great, it's just a simple way to feed a family. For a lot of people, business is just a job. I need a job. I need a way to feed a family. So they're involved in business. Not meaning they own one, just meaning they work for one. And they're happy. Like, hey, owner seems like a decent guy. Or the big corporation I work for, they're pretty cool. They give me benefits. I've made my way up the ladder, but I'm making a good living. We have a nice house. I'm able to feed the kids. Got a 401k going. Life's pretty grand, and I get a nice cold beer on the weekends. So I'm happy. So for a lot of people, it's just a way to have a lifestyle. But for entrepreneurs, it can be so much more. For business owners, it can be so much more. And for people that understand what a business truly is, it can be so much more. You can find a lot of fulfillment in the challenge of business. You can find a lot of fulfillment in solving problems. You can find a lot of fulfillment in innovating and creating and coming up with new solutions to challenging issues. And you could love the competitiveness of a business. I mean, some people, we're not living in a society where you get to draw the sword and fight it out to see who's best. So they go to business because they want to be competitive, and it gives them a chance to really test themselves against competitors to see how they do. Profit has to be part of all that. So I'm not saying that profit's bad. I think profits are great. They can be fantastic. They're kind of amoral. I mean, a profit can be used in so many ways. It can be gained in many ways, some ways that are moral, some that are immoral. And profits can be used in ways that are moral and immoral. So profit to me is amoral. And I think maybe Friedman's going for more of an amoral, reductionistic, materialistic, like how do we define what a business is all about? But at its core, business has to be about the application of the truths discovered in the other areas, the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, and formal sciences that can then be applied to the world that we live in. Now, wealth creation is a fantastic thing, and you can't be in business just wanting kind of this theoretical pursuit of truth. You ought to get into academics and study. And a lot of people that are interested in business but don't want to do business go that route, and they become business professors and business writers and business thinkers, and maybe you accuse me business YouTube people. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's about truth. Now, you say, okay, that's still kind of conceptual or esoteric. Like, I like kind of the concept a little bit, Mike, or maybe you don't like it, but what does that actually mean? What kind of truths are we talking about? And Charlie actually just posted a question. If you're still there, Charlie, and this relates. Charlie says, is the true purpose of business freedom? And see, this is I love that question, because if the truth that we're able to understand, one of the truths or some of the truth that we're able to discover and understand is about ourselves, like what does it mean to be a human being? What gives people fulfillment? What is an ideal situation for a human being? Like what type of political system, what type of culture, what type of day-to-day life? There are different arguments out there. So some people think that you ought to be part of a collective, that you should lose certain agency for the better of everybody else. Others are like, screw everybody else. You should have all the agency you want. You should be able to do whatever you want, and no one should ever stop you. And even to those ends, people say, you could say, well, fine, if you want to have that extreme view that you should be able to do whatever you want, then you have to go on your own freight. You got to earn your own money, make your own way. Whoa, no. Some people are like, I want the right and the ability. The world owes me the right and the ability to do whatever I want. So not only do I demand the right to do what I want, but I also demand that society, the government, etc., provide me the means and the resources to do whatever I want. So you get so many ways of peeling this onion. But once you start to say, okay, well, we've been studying, like theology has told us for centuries that like the Christian theology, for example, I'm a Christian, that man bears God's image, that every human being, whether they're Christians or not, are made in the image of God. If you understand that to be true, you understand that there is the transcendent, you understand God to be a real thing, and you understand that every human being bears God's image, then you understand there's something kind of sacred about a person. And to get to Charlie's question, is the true purpose of business freedom? If you bear God's image, you should have a level of freedom. It would be immoral to bind a human being, an entity, a person, an animal that is bearing God's image in certain ways. Now, that works both ways. I'm not saying that you have total freedom. You shouldn't be allowed to go down the street committing acts of violence randomly because you think I'm a God. That's not what I'm saying. But if you bear the image of the divine, holy Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, if you are an image bearer of the Creator, then you should have the freedom to apply who you are in the world in ways that are constructive and good. Again, this goes now to philosophy. What is good? Can we know what's good? What's constructive? What's good for society? Again, back to the studies, the humanities, political science, another social science, history and theology, philosophy, all these things. We're trying to understand what is true and good and right. And as we understand those things and we apply them, we come to something like business or the military even. You go, well, military is just evil. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Military science is a necessary thing. Clausewitz, in his book On War, talks about, you have to understand that all military action, all war is really an extension of a political will. So once you start to understand that, you go, okay, well then what's a right political structure? What are right political goals? What is a just war? What is an unjust war, et cetera? So this gets kind of, you can unpack this in a million different directions. I'm not saying that each discipline in the academic world is trying to understand the only truth that there is. They're after truth, capital T, they're after truth. They will each see it through their lens. They'll discover it through their disciplines and experiences and ways of doing what they do. A painter is going to think about and be after truth in a different way than an architect will. There might be some overlap, and different than the way a mathematician will, and so on. But you take all these disciplines, you begin now to apply them. You come with a good theological, good philosophical, good political, good literature, kind of truth background, and now you can operate business in a way that's meaningful. And then you start thinking, profit, I need profit. It's not a bad thing. But is that truly, no pun intended, the only purpose of a business? Is that really the true purpose of a business is profit? Or is business an opportunity to express the truth in ways, in economic and productivity and through the agency of human work, not just individuals working, but people coming together as companies, a company of people, to solve problems, to create value, and in the process create wealth. Now I open this up saying, hey, this concept is also bastardized, it's been perverted, and it's being applied in ways that are really destructive. So what I want to be clear is I'm not saying that businesses should necessarily be places or entities with giant agendas. So what you get now, you get this kind of activist corporate culture, and it's not just a couple companies, it's become the standard. The standard is activism. But there's a total cynicism, and this is where the truth is not in these businesses. The truth is not in their efforts. I made a video a couple weeks ago about Bumble. And in that video, I talked about Bumble, the dating app designed more from a feminist perspective for women. Bumble ran an ad campaign, a public ad campaign in, I believe, LA, the big billboards and everything saying things like celibacy is not the option. And what they were going for, and I've talked about this, so if you've heard it, forgive me, but what they're going for is to say, hey, so a lot of women are saying I'm going celibate. And there's two main reasons. One is the overturn of Roe v. Wade. They're like, look, if you're going to take away my right to an abortion, or my autonomy over my own body, then I'm not going to have sex with anybody. The other is I'm so sick of the way I'm being treated out in the kind of sexual market, if you will, because that's what a lot of these apps are. They're hookup apps. They're not necessarily like I'm looking to settle down and get married and have a family. It's I want to have a relationship, and that relationship might be a one-night stand, or it might last for a few weeks. Maybe I'm looking for love, but I'm not necessarily looking for a commitment. So a lot of these apps just are, people turn to them. We've got the sexual revolution, and people are looking to hook up. It's hookup culture. So Bumble took some heat because it was like women were saying, look, we're wanting to be celibate because we're getting the short end of the stick here. Government's against us, which I don't agree with necessarily, but that's their argument. Government's against us. And the men are terrible. The people that we're finding, they're just treating us like trash. They're treating us like a piece of meat. What a surprise. So my argument in there was that mankind has had a way to deal with this problem from the beginning. Like, we've got marriage. You don't have to be celibate. There is a place where you can be safe, both to find love and intimacy, connection, fulfillment, and also have children, be fruitful. And so one of the points that I made in that video, though, was, Bumble is a publicly traded company, and, they wear this kind of feminist clothing, and they, figuratively speaking, their brand, and they talk about, it's all about women and everything, but they're out there going, hey, get out there and have sex. And the reason being is they can't make a profit unless women are out there making themselves available. So Bumble's got, it tends to be more women and lesbians. It's got a lot of guys on there too, and the guys are like, well, there are no women on here. No women interested in men. And then usership falls, and then the stock price plummets, and Bumble's been feeling it. So they ran these very cynical ads telling women, get out there and do it. Because if you don't, they don't say that, but the subtext is, we can't make a profit. They've got to go back to the shareholders every quarter and say, we made a profit. And when you have a business philosophy that says the only purpose of a business is to make a profit, you get the Bumbles of the world. Companies that are pushing you to desecrate a sacred aspect of yourself. Now, they don't believe in that. They're like, we don't even believe that's a thing. That's just your right-wing fantasy. When they're pushing women out there to make themselves vulnerable, to be taken advantage of often. That's why the women are saying they're stopping. They don't want to be a part of it because they feel like they've been abused and taken advantage of. But Bumble's out there saying, you got to do this. Well, that's for a profit. That's solely for profit. And what they end up doing, though, is they're not coming out. They're saying, look, we care about you. This is a feminist app, and you're the one in control. And it's like, it's all about how great it is for you, but make sure you take the drug. We need you to take the drugs. We need you to be addicted to the drug. Otherwise, we can't make a profit. So when you have this reductionistic kind of approach of making a profit, and there's no truth, there's no recognition of what's true, that it can become very destructive. And then you get people complaining that, corporate is, business is so bad, and capitalism so evil, but they're actually not looking at what the real problem is. But the other side of this same issue is this activist style marketing, this activist style positioning for these companies. They're pushing, like, you work for these big corporations. Right now it's Pride Month. June is Pride Month. And you work in a big corporation, you have to celebrate this. There's no room for dissension. There's no room to question. There's no room to saying, hey, look, I got a religious exemption here, kids. I'm like, Greek Orthodox, or I'm Catholic, or whatever these things are. They'll destroy you. There's just no room for dissension, no room for you to say, sorry, that's not my bag. Like, you could even say, look, you guys do your thing. Like, I'm not trying to stop you. I just can't participate. You're done. Your career is over. So that's an aggressive kind of activism where they're saying, no, it's so important that we use business to mold society. You're not trying to mold society to truth. You're trying to mold it to your vision of what you think the world should be. That's not a hunger. That's not an intellectual curiosity about what's real and true. That's an agenda where you don't even care what's true. You just are going to push this thing. And you'll pay the price if you don't agree. YouTube's another example. Like, if I say certain things on YouTube, I'll get demonetized, I'll get deplatformed. And not just because people hate me, but YouTube itself as a corporation will come after me and go, you can't say that. And I might be saying something that's true, or I might be criticizing something that seems to be delusional. But YouTube will come in and go, no. I remember during COVID-19, the vaccines weren't really working that great. And people are saying, like, I don't think I like this. YouTube you got shut down. Like, if you said anything about that, you got shut down. And then you get a lot of the woke marketing, Bud Light, with their Dylan Mulvaney, oopsie daisy, Gillette kind of browbeating men that they need to be, more feminine in their approach to women. Don't be masculine, even though we sell razors for you to shave that masculine hair off your face and look masculine, nice jawline, but heaven forbid you act like a man. So you get a lot of this kind of woke activism showing up in a business. So this is what happens when you kind of take this concept of how do you apply truth in the applied, but that's the issue. They're really not curious about the truth. In fact, they'll do everything they can to shut the truth down, to stop debate. There are ways that we quest for the truth, that we try to discover. There are pathways, scientific process, philosophical reason, history and tradition tells us a lot about the truth, and so on. Literature. They will shut all that down. None of that matters. All that matters is what the progressive vision for the day is, and then you must submit. Totalitarian. So there's another example in political science. So I think that the opportunity, I don't claim to have it all worked out, but I think the opportunity in all this is to say, how can we reinvest business with the truth? What does that even look like? What does that even mean? And this is kind of a project for me. This is something that I want to unpack more, something that I want to discover more, and something hopefully I can become more effective, maybe more better. I can become better at articulating and maybe more relevant and effective in my articulation of it. So this is kind of where I'm at. That the human quest is to discover truth, and that the applied arts and sciences are the fields and the areas, the arenas where we apply the truths that we've come to understand. Be they metaphysical truth, be they hard science truth, mathematical, conceptual truth, whatever that is, and that this is really a wonderful opportunity, but that I think we've lost the script a little bit. We've reduced business just to profit making. I love making a profit. I like creating wealth. It's fun. It's a blessing to the people that are participating. It can be done in a very good way that's honorable and noble, and I know many people who do that. But at the same time, given the cultural values and the paucity of an understanding of what is ethical or moral anymore, you can't take that for granted. You get companies like Bumble that, they've embraced the Milton Friedman concept of it's just about profits. And then if you don't have an ethical or moral framework within which to work, then anything goes. You can manipulate people to your own end. And I go back to this, the Christian idea, the 2,000-year-old idea plus, that goes beyond Christianity, that human beings are created in the image of God. Well, if you bear God's image, it's immoral for me to manipulate you for my ends, to take advantage of you somehow to get your money, to somehow impoverish you so that I can enrich myself. Now, I can solve a problem for you, a real problem, and say, here's what that'll cost you. And go, you know what? That's worth it. I love it. Let's do it. And we can transact, and your life can be transformed, and mine can be transformed, and everybody's good. I know I'm talking in theoreticals, and the day-to-day is a little bit messier, maybe some more gray areas, but I think we have to start from a conceptual framework that gives us a good pathway forward, like what could this look like? And so over the next months and years, most likely, I'll be wrestling with this. What does it mean to reinvest the truth in business? How does that play out in the specifics of business, human resources, accounting, manufacturing, marketing? And what does this look like in a day-to-day company? Well, I think a lot of companies are maybe doing this inadvertently. I don't think the owners are getting up going, today I just want to find capital T truth, and we're gonna somehow express that through the business. No, I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I think a lot of people are already intrinsically oriented towards truth and what's good and right. Their upbringing, their personal experiences, their faith, whatever those things are that bring them to that. And they're just naturally doing this. Some of this they're probably just doing without thinking about it. And that's fine. I'm not asking people to be like it's not good unless you're really thinking about it. I'm just saying I think that we have lost the script here, the narrative. And I said earlier that this applies to all kinds of stuff. It does. Journalism. How would you feel if journalists were actually really interested in the truth? They're not anymore. They're not interested in the truth, and we know that. I'm not going to sit arguing. Broadcasting, not necessarily. Law, not necessarily. Military sciences, not necessarily. So I'm making these broad statements, but that's kind of how I say this applies across the board. You look at any of these applied arts and sciences, I think we've got a wonderful opportunity to reinvest them with the truth and maybe reorient those other areas, the humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, and formal sciences towards a true quest for truth. Let's stop trying to use the university to brainwash people. Let's stop using it to agendize. Let's stop using it for propaganda, and make it make the university a place where people can truly pursue the truth, a pursuit of the truth. Imagine that. So guys, that's all I've got for you right now. I'm going to wrap up the podcast for those that are listening. I'm going to stay live here. So if you're listening to the podcast from audio, keep an eye on my YouTube channel. Go to Mike Gastin, subscribe, keep an eye out because I do these live. I will be getting into a schedule at some point, but if you want to take part in the Q&A and the live chat, live stream, you can do that. You can ask me anything, and at the end, I'll have a nice conversation. So I'm going to wrap that up. Those of you listening won't hear, but those of you with me on YouTube, do me a favor, stick around, and let's talk a little bit more. But guys, thanks so much for joining me. I love each and every one of you, and I will catch you in the next episode. Cheers. All right. So if I've got any questions, Charlie asked about the true purpose of business freedom. If you're sitting there watching the stream right now and you had a question or a comment, please jump in. If not, I'll wrap this thing up right quick. We haven't had a huge viewership. What a surprise. I'm over here like, I'm not upset because I hardly stream. I hardly put videos out. Typically, you can build an audience if you show up regularly. People will be there. So I don't expect a big show right now. But at the same time, if I can get more to a regular schedule, I think it'll be a little easier to have these kind of conversations. All right, so I waited a few minutes, nothing there. Looks like we're wrapping up the show. Guys, again, thank you so much for joining me. Love each and every one of you. Please leave a comment down below. Maybe share this with someone you think might find it interesting. And I will catch each and every one of you in the next episode. Cheers.